I want to tell you something that no one talks about. It is something I learned the hard way, something that could have saved me years of discomfort and embarrassment. If you are getting older or have elderly loved ones, you have probably noticed it. That strange, musty, almost sour smell that seems to linger no matter how many showers you take or how often you wash your clothes. People whisper about it. They make jokes, but no one tells you the truth about why it happens and how to fix it. For the longest time, I thought it was just a part of aging. Maybe it was the skin changing or the body breaking down in ways I could not control. I tried everything. I scrubbed myself with the strongest soap I could find. I washed my clothes every day. I sprayed my house with air fresheners. But no matter what I did, that smell would not go away. And the worst part? I could not even smell it on myself. I only knew about it from the looks on people's faces, the way they kept their distance, the polite but obvious steps back when I leaned in to talk. It was humiliating. Then one day I visited an old friend. He was in his 80s, but sharp as ever. His home smelled fresh, clean, not like mine, not like the other elderly homes I had been to. I finally got the courage to ask him how he did it. He laughed and said, "It is not what you think. It is not your skin. It is not your clothes. It is not even your house. It is your ears." I thought he was joking. My ears? How could my ears be the problem? I had never heard anything like that before, but he insisted. He told me that as people age, they produce more earwax. It builds up slowly. Sometimes it is dry and flaky. Other times it is sticky and thick. But over time, it traps bacteria, dead skin, sweat, oils, and all of that creates a smell that is far stronger than people realize. The worst part? It does not just stay in the ears. It spreads. It clings to pillows, to hair, to anything that touches the ears. I did not believe him at first. It sounded too simple, too ridiculous. But I was desperate. So that night, I took a warm washcloth and carefully cleaned around my ears. I wiped behind them. I gently cleaned inside, being careful not to push anything deeper. And for the first time in years, I noticed something. The smell of my pillow was less intense. The next day, I did it again. Then again the next day. Within a week, something shocking happened. The smell that had haunted me for years was almost completely gone. I could not believe it. Something so simple, so small. Yet no one had ever told me. And when I started telling other older friends about it, they all had the same reaction. Shock, disbelief, then relief. Because they had been suffering in silence just like me. They thought they were dirty, that they were doomed to smell bad forever. But the truth is, it was never about getting old. It was about neglecting a part of the body that no one thinks about. The ears do not just hold wax, they hold history. Every conversation, every laugh, every moment of silence. But they also hold on to things that need to be let go. And when they are not cleaned properly, they start to tell a story you do not want them to tell. The story of neglect, the story of time passing without care. Now, I make sure to clean my ears every single day, not with cotton swabs. Those push the wax in deeper. I use a warm cloth, sometimes a little bit of natural oil to soften anything stuck inside, and I always make sure to clean behind my ears, because that is where the real trouble starts. That is where the oils and sweat gather. That is where the smell begins. It is funny. People spend so much money on fancy soaps, expensive colognes, perfumes that promise to keep them fresh all day. But the real secret to smelling clean is something they never even think about. Something no one ever taught them. Something as simple as taking an extra minute in the morning to care for a part of the body that has been ignored for too long. If you are struggling with this, you are not alone. If you have been embarrassed, if you have felt self-conscious, if you have noticed people keeping their distance but did not know why, I am here to tell you that it is not your fault. No one told you, no one warned you, but now you know, and now you can do something about it. Aging does not have to mean smelling bad. It does not have to mean losing confidence. It does not have to mean feeling ashamed of something you cannot control. Because now you can control it. Now you have the knowledge that so many people are missing. And if you take just one extra minute every day to clean the right place, your life will change in ways you never expected. I wish someone had told me sooner. I wish I had not spent years feeling like I was trapped in a body that was betraying me. But now that I know, I will never go back. And neither should you. Because you deserve to feel fresh. You deserve to feel confident. You deserve to be close to the people you love without fear or embarrassment. So try it. Tonight, take a warm cloth, wipe your ears, behind them, around them, inside gently, and see what happens. See how something so small can make a difference so big. I promise you will never look back. Now let's clear some common questions. Could this overlooked hygiene issue be one of the reasons some elderly people feel socially isolated? I have lived long enough to know that loneliness is not just about being alone. It is about feeling unseen, unheard, avoided. You can be in a room full of people and still feel like a ghost. I have watched it happen to others, and I have felt it myself. And now I understand something that I never thought about when I was younger. Something that no one talks about. Something as simple as hygiene, more specifically, the way we clean or fail to clean one small part of our body, can push people away without us even realizing it. I used to wonder why some older folks ended up so isolated. At first, I thought it was just the natural way of things. People grow up, get busy, drift apart. But then I started noticing patterns. The way younger family members kept their distance when they visited. The way friends stopped coming around as often. The way even strangers in public places seemed to lean away. At first, I told myself it was just in my head, but then I saw it happen over and over again, and I had to ask myself why. It was not until a close friend confided in me that I began to understand. He was an old man like me, strong in spirit but carrying the weight of the years. He told me that he felt invisible, that people avoided sitting too close, that they cut conversations short, and then with shame in his voice, he admitted something that hit me hard. He had overheard someone whisper about the way he smelled. It broke him. He had been bathing regularly, washing his clothes, using the same soap and cologne he had used for years. Yet somehow it was not enough. He felt humiliated, confused, powerless. I could see the pain in his eyes because I had felt it too, and that was when I remembered another conversation I had not given much thought to at the time. An old friend had once told me that the smell of aging does not come from the skin or the clothes. It comes from the ears. I had not believed it back then. But now, with my friend sitting across from me, ashamed and defeated, I started to wonder if there was truth to it. I did something that felt almost too simple. I took a warm cloth and wiped behind my ears, cleaned around them, inside them. Nothing aggressive, just gentle, consistent care. And within days, I noticed something shocking. The lingering smell that I had grown used to, the one I did not even realize was there, started to fade. My pillow no longer had that musty scent in the morning. My hair smelled fresher. My clothes stayed clean longer. But the real change was in the way people reacted to me. It was subtle at first. Conversations lasted a little longer. People leaned in instead of stepping back. And that was when it hit me. This was never just about hygiene. It was about connection. When people sense an unpleasant smell, even if they do not mean to, they react instinctively. They create distance. They might not even be aware of it. It is not cruelty. It is human nature. And for older folks who already struggle with feeling left behind, that unspoken rejection is enough to push them deeper into isolation. I thought back to all the elderly people I had seen sitting alone in parks, on benches, in waiting rooms. I thought about the ones who had once been lively but had grown quiet, withdrawn. I wondered how many of them had unknowingly been pushed away by something as small as an unnoticed smell. How many had assumed people were avoiding them because of age when in reality, it was something entirely preventable? The worst part is that no one tells you. No one pulls you aside and says, "Hey, you might want to clean behind your ears more often." They just keep their distance. They make excuses. And before you know it, you stop getting invited places. You stop feeling welcome. And eventually, you stop trying. That is how isolation begins. Not always in big, obvious ways, but in the small, quiet moments that add up over time. I think about my friend who felt invisible. How different his life could have been if someone had told him sooner. If he had known that one small change could have given him back the closeness he craved. And I think about how many others are out there, suffering in silence, blaming themselves for something they do not even know is happening. There is an old saying that the smallest key can unlock the heaviest door. I believe that now, because I have seen firsthand how something as small as ear hygiene can change the way people interact with you. It is not vanity. It is not about trying to smell like flowers or fancy cologne. It is about removing an invisible barrier, one that keeps people at a distance without them even realizing why. If you are reading this and you feel like people have been pulling away, if you have started to wonder why conversations are shorter, why hugs are fewer, why the world seems to be shrinking around you, please do not assume it is just because you are getting older. Try this first. Take a warm cloth, wipe your ears, behind them, around them, inside carefully. Do it for a week, then pay attention. See if people start leaning in when they talk to you instead of stepping back. See if you feel more welcome in spaces where you once felt like an outsider. This is not just about smelling fresh. It is about breaking the cycle of isolation that too many elderly people fall into. It is about holding on to connection, about feeling seen, heard, wanted. No one should have to spend their later years feeling like a burden, like an afterthought, like someone people would rather avoid. And if something as simple as better hygiene can help prevent that, then it is worth paying attention to. I wish I had known this sooner. I wish my friend had known. But it is not too late. Not for me, not for you, and not for the people you care about. So let this be the start of something different, a small change that leads to a bigger life. Because everyone deserves to be close to the ones they love, to feel wanted, to feel welcome. And sometimes all it takes is knowing where to start. How can caregivers and family members gently address this issue without making their loved ones feel embarrassed? I have learned over the years that the way you say something is just as important as what you say, especially when it comes to delicate matters. There is no easy way to tell someone you love that they have an odor. No simple way to bring up hygiene without making them feel small. I have seen it happen. I have felt it happen. A careless word, a look of discomfort, a subtle step backward. It does not take much to wound the pride of an aging soul. And if you are not careful, even the most well-intended advice can build a wall instead of a bridge. I remember a friend of mine, a proud man who had spent his life taking care of others. He had built houses with his hands, raised children with love and discipline. He had always been the strong one, the provider. But as the years went on, something changed. His world became smaller, his body slower, and then without warning, people started to pull away. They did not say why, they just did. He noticed it, but never spoke of it. He only said that he felt different, that people no longer seemed as warm toward him. And I knew, though he would never admit it, that it hurt him deeply. It was not until much later that his daughter finally told him the truth. She said it as kindly as she could, but I could see the pain in his eyes when he told me about it. He had always thought of himself as a clean man. He showered daily, wore fresh clothes, but he had never known that certain areas of his body needed more attention as he aged. No one had ever told him, and now he sat there feeling humiliated, not because of what she said, but because it had taken so long for someone to say it. That is the hardest part. When people wait too long, the conversation becomes heavier. Instead of a gentle nudge, it feels like a confrontation. Instead of guidance, it feels like judgment. And for an aging person whose world is already changing faster than they can keep up with, that can be a crushing thing. That is why if you are a caregiver or a family member who needs to address this, you must do it with patience, with understanding, with love, because how you approach it can make all the difference in whether they listen or shut down. The first thing you must understand is that pride runs deep in those who have lived a long time. They have spent their lives taking care of themselves, taking care of others. They do not want to feel like a burden. They do not want to be treated like children. So the worst thing you can do is make them feel like they have failed at something as basic as cleanliness. Instead, you must make it feel natural, like it is just another part of life, something that everyone deals with, something that does not take away from their dignity. I have found that the best way to bring up personal hygiene is not to make it about them alone. People do not like to feel singled out. But if you make it a conversation about general health, about changes that happen to everyone, it is much easier to accept. I remember telling my friend about how my own hygiene habits had changed as I got older, how I had learned that the body does not clean itself the way it used to, how I had discovered that ear hygiene was more important than I ever realized. I did not point a finger at him. I did not say, "You need to do this." I simply shared what I had learned. And you know what? A few days later, he mentioned that he had started cleaning behind his ears more. He never said it was because of me. He never admitted that he had been struggling with the same thing. But I knew, and that was enough. Sometimes actions speak louder than words. If you live with an elderly loved one or spend a lot of time with them, you can gently introduce better hygiene habits without making it obvious. You can casually mention a new product you have been using. Leave warm washcloths in easy-to-reach places. If they struggle with mobility, offer to help in a way that preserves their dignity. Maybe say something like, "I have been using this great soap. It really helps with dry skin and keeps everything feeling fresh. Do you want to try it?" Small things, gentle things, ways to guide without forcing. I also believe in the power of routine. When something becomes part of a daily habit, it no longer feels like a chore. If you are a caregiver, try incorporating hygiene into a natural flow instead of making it feel like a special task. If they brush their hair, remind them to wipe behind their ears. If they wash their face, encourage them to clean around their neck. Do it casually, almost as an afterthought, because when something feels normal, there is no shame in it. Most importantly, never let hygiene become a reason for isolation. If an elderly person starts to notice that people are avoiding them, they will retreat further into themselves. And once that happens, it is hard to bring them back. They will begin to feel like they are a burden, like they are unwanted. And that feeling is far worse than any odor could ever be. That is why if you notice a problem, address it early, kindly, quietly, with love, because no one, no matter how old they are, deserves to feel unloved. I have seen the power of a gentle word, the difference it makes when something is said with care instead of criticism. And I have also seen the damage that silence can do, when people wait too long, when they assume their loved one will figure it out on their own, when they let embarrassment get in the way of honesty. The truth is, this is not about hygiene alone. It is about connection, about dignity, about making sure that the people we love do not feel abandoned in their later years. So if you have an elderly loved one who may need help with this, do not wait until they are already feeling isolated. Find a way to bring it up naturally. Share your own experiences. Make it about health, about comfort, about feeling fresh rather than fixing a problem. Offer solutions without making it seem like a lecture. And above all, remind them that they are valued, that they are respected, that they are still the same strong, capable person they have always been. Because in the end, it is not just about smelling clean. It is about feeling human, feeling cared for, feeling like they still belong. And that is something worth preserving, no matter how many years pass. Could this small but significant change in hygiene habits redefine how people perceive aging and personal care? Ah, my dear friend, sit with me for a while. Let me tell you something that may surprise you. Life is not a collection of grand moments, but rather the sum of the smallest decisions we make every day. A sip of water at the right time, a smile to a stranger, a moment of gratitude before the sun sets, and yes, even the way we care for our bodies in the quiet moments of routine. You see, most people believe that aging is an unstoppable force, a slow erosion of vitality that one must simply accept. They see it as a series of losses. First, the sharpness of youth begins to dull. Then the skin surrenders to time. The bones whisper of their struggles. The hands, once firm and steady, start to tremble like leaves in a soft breeze. But what if I told you that a small yet significant change in hygiene habits could redefine how we perceive aging itself? What if something as simple as the way we clean, nourish, and respect our bodies could shift the way the world sees not just personal care, but the very nature of growing older? When I was a young man, I did not think much about such things. To be clean was to be presentable. To wash was merely to rid oneself of the dirt of the day. I did what was necessary, nothing more. My father before me was the same. In his time, soap was a luxury, and a proper bath was an event rather than a daily practice. And yet, despite the simplicity of his habits, he carried himself with pride. But I remember the scent of old age clinging to him before his years had truly claimed him. It was as if time had marked him with an invisible ink that could not be washed away. I did not understand it then, but I do now. The way we care for ourselves determines how the world perceives us. In the world, oh, how it loves to judge. There came a time when I began to notice something remarkable. The people who aged with grace, with dignity, with a spark in their eyes that defied the years, all shared something in common. It was not just good genetics or sheer luck. It was not even wealth, though comfort certainly plays its part. No, it was something far simpler. They all treated personal care as a sacred ritual rather than a chore. They did not see hygiene as mere necessity, but as an act of reverence for the body that carried them through life. They made small changes, nothing drastic, nothing complicated. And yet these tiny shifts rewrote their entire presence in the world. I recall an old friend of mine, a man named Thomas. He was well into his 70s when I first noticed that people never spoke of him as old. They did not describe him as elderly, frail, or past his prime. Instead, they called him refined, well-kept, even handsome. The secret was not in what he wore or how he walked. It was in the details that most overlooked. He took care of his skin as if it were a fine piece of leather that needed oiling. He brushed his teeth not out of duty, but with the care of an artist refining his masterpiece. His hands were always clean, his nails tended to with a quiet diligence. His hair, though streaked with silver, was never unkempt, and the scent that followed him was never of decay, never of forgotten care, but always of something fresh, something intentional. You might think such things are trivial. You might say, what difference does it make if one rinses their face with cold water instead of hot? If one massages their scalp rather than scrubbing it mindlessly? If one chooses a natural oil over a harsh chemical? But I tell you, these are not small things. These are the stitches in the fabric of perception. They weave together an image, a presence, a legacy. I have seen men and women who let time take them without a fight. They believe aging is something that happens to them rather than something they participate in. And I have seen others who meet time as a dance partner rather than an enemy. They embrace the years with a knowing smile, not because they defy age, but because they respect themselves enough to care for what time has given them. There was a woman I once knew, Eleanor. She was well past 80, but carried herself with a radiance that made people pause. Her secret was not hidden in expensive creams or elaborate treatments. No, it was in the way she cared for her body with gentle devotion. She never allowed herself to go to bed without cleansing her face, a habit she had followed since she was a girl. She brushed her hair 100 times each night, not out of vanity, but out of love for the ritual. And her scent, oh, her scent, was never of something overpowering, but always of something fresh, something familiar, like the soft whisper of lavender on a summer breeze. You see, the way we care for ourselves does not go unnoticed. The world perceives those who respect themselves differently. A person who carries themselves with care, who treats their hygiene as a reflection of their self-worth, does not fade into the background. They are seen, they are heard, they are remembered. I have come to believe that aging is not the slow diminishing of light, but rather the way that light is maintained, redirected, and honored. And if something as small as a change in hygiene habits can redefine the way the world sees aging, then is it truly small at all? Consider the hands that wash a face with patience rather than haste. The breath that is fresh, not just for others, but for oneself. The skin that is touched with kindness rather than neglect. These things, though simple, are declarations. They tell the world, I am here. I am still worthy of care. So, my friend, I ask you, what is the difference between one who ages with dignity and one who is cast aside by time? It is not merely fate. It is not solely luck. It is the small choices made every day. The quiet acts of self-respect that accumulate into something undeniable. I have walked this earth for many years. I have seen generations rise and fall. And if there is one thing I know with certainty, it is this. The way you treat yourself is the way the world will treat you. Change, no matter how small, has power. And perhaps, just perhaps, the greatest transformation begins with something as simple as the way you care for yourself today. If you liked today's discussion, don't forget to like the video, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to stay updated with every video we release. And yes, don't forget to share your experiences and thoughts in the comments. Every comment is special to us. Your feedback helps us improve further. We'll continue to meet you in every new video on this channel, so until next time, take care.